reported is that Danny Ferry is expected to take the helm in New Orleans. So I want to ask you, first and foremost, Grant, what you think about this hire.
Well, Danny Ferry, obviously he's been around the game. His father was a general manager. Obviously played in the NBA, was in the Atlanta Hawks. There was a situation that occurred, and obviously enough time, I guess, has elapsed where New Orleans felt like, it was time to bring him in. But I think, first of all, just sort of processing the firing. I'm questioning whether was it the mishandling of Anthony Davis and his trade demands, or was it sort of just the complete body of work during Dempsey's reign where, I guess your best player in franchise history asking to be traded after 6 years maybe warrants this. But it's a tough situation. I think Demps did a good job, and obviously we moved on, and it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. But Ferry has done well and has had a track record in the past, and it's an interesting situation to inherit. But I am surprised by this.
And that's an interesting and really excellent point, that it could perhaps come in the wake of this Anthony Davis situation, but could also be the reality that you've had this franchise player in place. You've had time to build a winning team around him. You had an opportunity to keep a guy like DeMarcus Cousins in town and chose not to. Do you see it more so as a move in the wake of the AD situation being botched the way that it was, or do you think that it's perhaps over the entirety of the body of work?
So Candace and I were talking about this, and I'm going to borrow from a couple of your points. And I guess the confusing thing for all of us kind of watching this, is that, we assume that management and ownership were all on the same page, and that's what they were saying about how they wanted to treat this Davis situation. Somewhere in between, after the trade deadline, management and ownership are not on the same page. And if you're going to replace Dale Demps with Danny Ferry, who was on the management team, right, then was Ferry not for the decision? Or
Yeah.
I mean, you can't say,
Right.
you can't say if Grant and I are working together, right?
Right.
And I leave, but you stay, so were you not with me?
No, which is a problem in itself.
Yeah,
Right.
which
We're
is
not
a
on the
problem
same
in itself,
pa- yeah.
which kind of would say, okay, would suggest that internally within the management team, there had to be something going on internally within the management team to make ownership say, you're gone, but you can stay.
So, Candace, what do you see as the best case scenario, not just for Anthony Davis moving forward, but for the Pelicans as a franchise?
Well, I think the NBA made it clear that sitting Anthony Davis was not an option. With, they're going to fine the Pelicans for sitting him. But the best situation right now, obviously you can't trade him now. You have to wait till the summer. But we were speaking about this as well. One person that's not going to mess up a trade is going to be Danny Ainge. He's not one of those people that's going to overgive or give you more than you deserve. So was the Lakers offer the best offer that they're possibly going to get? Probably. I think you look to get a high draft pick. I don't know whether you part ways with some of the guys that you have. Julius Randle, to me, is one of those up-and-coming players that I don't know if I would part ways with right now. I think he's still young and still able to develop. And I think you go from there. I was really surprised with this firing because I think, like what you said, a united front is usually what happens. Management as well as ownership usually is on the same page. And that just didn't happen, apparently.
And it'll be interesting to see, too, Candace, what direction they take. Do they try to quickly rebuild, keep a Julius Randle, Drew Holiday, maybe do a trade with one of these teams and now sort of still be in the playoff picture, if you will? Or do they try to blow things up and kind of start all over again? And that remains to be seen. But I do think Boston, I think L.A., I think there'll be other teams that maybe we're not thinking about right now that will really try to, go after a once-in-a-lifetime player. And you got to kind of see how things play out. Teams have expectations. Teams may not reach them. And teams have assets that they can use to go after them. So I do think there'll be other teams that emerge, but I think right now the favorites have to be L.A. and Boston.
Do you think, though, that as Candace mentioned, that the best offer they were going to get for AD has already come and gone?
I don't know. I mean, I think it depends on what exactly they're trying to accomplish.
They have to have lost leverage at this point, though, right? Because the Lakers at this point, if they come back with another trade offer this summer for Anthony Davis, it's not going to look the same as it did to get him before the trade deadline, knowing that you can get him as a free agent next season.
So I would say it's up to whoever the new manager's going to be, he or she, right? He or she, and if it's Danny Ferry, right? He's got to somehow say, okay, how can I get back on the same page with Anthony Davis? There's got to be some type of communication that happens between Davis, his representatives, and the organization to see if there's some way that we can get through these next 25, 27 games without it being so chaotic. So Alvin Gentry can have a chance to continue to coach and develop. And then you got to come up with a game plan. What is it that we're trying to do moving forward? Are we trying to rebuild, or are we trying to get this type of asset for our team, this type of player for our team? What type of team we're trying to build? And is Alvin Gentry still going to be our coach? So there are a lot of questions that are yet to be answered, and it all depends on the next person that's sitting in that chair. He or she will have the answers.
But now, because of the way it was so publicly handled, through the media, through the Pelicans organization, the Lakers organization, Anthony Davis himself, and Anthony Davis's representation, we now know that not only does he want to be traded, he wants to play for the Lakers. So you would imagine that any other team that does have assets to give up, as we've mentioned the Boston Celtics so many times, would give up less, knowing that you're getting a one-year rental.
Well, that's the thing that they're in battle with now, especially if Kyrie does not re-sign with Boston. Because you're looking at something where July 1st is when free agents sign, or, you can re-sign Kyrie Irving. The draft is before that. So then you're depending on Kyrie making his decision to figure out whether, because if I don't sign Kyrie back, I'm keeping Jason Tatum. Because Jason Tatum, to me, is one of those players that can develop into a perennial all-star, has the potential at least to be in that. And, just in terms from an organization standpoint, if you have somebody like Anthony Davis, you need another star player to really bring him in. And that's something that they're going to have to battle with, because teams aren't going to want to just rent him. They're going to want confirmation that he's going to resign.
What then do you see as the best case scenario for the Lakers now in this current situation, knowing that they thought AD could be in purple and gold post-trade deadline, knowing he's not, but also knowing that in the near future he could choose to be without having to give up any assets?
That's the predicament that you're in as a Laker. I go for the sure thing, and I think I make the trade. I'm huge on keeping Kuzma. Kuzma, to me, would fit perfectly. He fits seamlessly with LeBron. He will add to Anthony Davis's game with his ability to stretch the floor, long, athletic, can defend, because really you're building against beating, right now, Golden State. And you have to be able to switch on that perimeter. They're long, they're athletic, they're capable of moving. I don't give up Kuzma. And so I think that's the thing that maybe has to go away this summer in that deal. And that's something that the Lakers are going to have to discuss.
I don't adhere to that. The best deal that they had was now, in the sense that I do believe you can look at Oklahoma City with Paul George. There was a foregone conclusion that he was going to go to L.A. He was from L.A. Yep. And I think in those environments, those organizations that believe in their culture and have a winning culture and just, the environment that's conducive for players and for great players to want to be a part of, I think they may take a risk. You see it with Toronto. They did it with Kawhi Leonard. All the talk was he wanted to be in L.A. It remains to be seen what he's going to do after this season. But from all indications, it seems like it's worked out. He's embraced it. They're playing great basketball. And as you get down into the playoffs and potentially, you go far, like you get emotionally invested in what's happening. And so I think there may be, and it may be a small percentage, but there may be some teams who believe in what they're doing and believe that they will be able to sell over the course of the year, much like OKC and Toronto did the last few years.